Good morning, everyone. Welcome to California's Opportunity Zones 2.0 Tribal Communities and Partners webinar. My name is Brian Coleman, and I serve as the Project Financing Manager with the Regional Economic Development Initiatives, or READY team at the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, or GO-Biz for short. We really want to thank you all for taking time to join us this morning to learn more about the Opportunity Zone program and California's process for identifying and selecting areas for Opportunity Zones 2.0 designation. Our team, the Ready team here at GoBiz, has been leading the coordination of California's Opportunity Zones 2.0 selection process, and we really appreciate the time and engagement and the opportunity to participate with tribal communities in this effort. And the decisions made through this process will help shape where significant amounts of private investment will be directed across California over the coming decade. And so your input and participation are truly invaluable to this effort. Today's webinar is meant to provide an overview of California's Opportunity Zones 2.0 selection process, and also to share and explore opportunities for tribal communities to participate. And so we do really look forward to collaborating with you all to ensure this process reflects the priorities and needs of tribal communities throughout the state. And yeah, any input, insights you have to share is extremely appreciated. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Tracy. All right, so real quickly, just wanted to briefly go over today's agenda for today's session. Kicking it off with some brief welcome and housekeeping items. After the welcome and intro, I will be passing it off to Christina Snyder Eshtari, Tribal Affairs Secretary with the Governor's Office of Tribal Affairs, who will be providing some remarks. After Christina's remarks, I will be providing a high-level overview of the Opportunity Zones program and all the updates that were made under Opportunity Zones 2.0. After my overview, my colleague Tracy Feinberg will take over and be providing a little overview of our Opportunity Zones 2.0 website, sharing some valuable resources to help explain the process, and then we'll be providing a overview of the local authority recommendation form, which is the form for community partners and local jurisdictions to use to submit opportunity zone nominations recommendations to the state. And then we have reserved a little bit of time at the end for open questions, and yeah, we really encourage you to uh, engage in this, and we really want this to be as engaging and interactive as possible. So any questions you have, feel free to come off mute and ask those. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Tracy. All right, so just a couple quick housekeeping items. Today's webinar is being recorded, and both the webinar recording and the presentation slides will be made available to attendees and individuals who weren't able to attend the webinar. Attendees will have full access to video, audio, and chat features throughout the webinar. So again, we want this to be an interactive and engaging process. However, if you do have a question, we do encourage you to reserve it for the Q&A or for the Q&A portion at the end. But if you do have any immediate questions, you're welcome to drop them in the chat or the Q&A function. Our team will be monitoring those throughout the session. If you do experience any technical difficulties, please use the chat feature, and a member of the GoBiz team is happy to assist you with troubleshooting any difficulties. And then again, yeah, if you do have a question for the GoBiz team, you may submit it at any time in the chat or the Q&A function, but the final portion of the webinar will be reserved for verbal questions, and we will be moderating that and ask you to use the raise hand feature if you do have a questions, and then we'll call on you to come off mute. All right, next slide, Tracy. All right, so with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Christina, who will provide some remarks from the Governor's Office of Tribal Affairs.
Thanks, Brian. Good morning, everybody. I'm Christina Snyder-Ashtari. It's nice to see some familiar faces, and I'm hoping that with this webinar, or this roundtable, that we can have some really good collaborative conversations about how tribes can engage in this new opportunity for Opportunity Zone designation. I've also got on my deputy, Loretta Miranda, and I also want to thank the entire GO-Biz team, Dana, Tracy, for setting this up. I think we all came together and thought it was incredibly important for tribes to be able to engage in this Opportunity Zone round. And I know it's been over a decade that tribes have been advocating to get direct Opportunity Zone designations from the federal government. And so I think in the absence of those direct designations, the state of California wanted to ensure with this round that is going through Governor Newsom that we really ensure that tribes have the opportunity to collaborate with local communities, with others, to make sure that they're engaging in this opportunity. Many of you I know work on other tax incentives like new markets and low-income housing tax credits. This is another of those types of incentives to draw investment into tribal communities and into underserved areas, so that you can get some new job opportunities, new economic development opportunities, and really think about how you diversify your portfolios within your tribal lands, and really leverage the opportunities that you all offer for development on tribal lands. As was mentioned, today's roundtable is recorded, but if you have questions that you would prefer aren't recorded, please just let us know and we can stop the recording. We will also encourage you to share this recording and any resources with anybody who was unable to attend today, because we do think that this is a really important opportunity. It only comes once every couple of years, if it comes every couple of years, and we want to make sure that tribes are fully engaging in this round. That is time limited. There is some time, but want to make sure that you all have the opportunity to engage. So without further ado, please, if you have questions, I know some of this can be kind of technical. Some of this, it's, a lot of jargon. There are no bad questions, so please feel free to ask questions freely, and we will attempt to answer them either within this roundtable or follow up afterward. But with that, I'll hand it back to Brian to get us started. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Christina. I really want to echo those remarks about the significance of this moment. This Opportunity Zone selection process does only come around every 10 years, and it is a tremendous opportunity to determine where tremendous amounts of private capital are deployed across the state, and we want to ensure that tribal communities do benefit from this incentive and take full advantage. So really, again, appreciate those comments, Christina. I really appreciate this. Appreciate everybody's participation and engagement with this process. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Tracy. All right, wonderful. So, yeah, really, real briefly, I wanted to start off this session just providing a high-level overview of the Opportunity Zones program. Some of you might have some familiarity with this incentive, but in case some of you might be unaware, wanted to give you a little bit of background and some insight into this extremely powerful tax incentive. So just for a little background on Opportunity Zones, it was initially established about 9 years ago now. It was established under the original Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. And its purpose is to attract long-term private investment into economically distressed communities. Essentially, the way it does this is any private investor, and it can be an individual investor, family offices, institutional investors, other high net worth individuals, if they have a capital gain from the disposition of any asset or the sale of any asset, and it can be stocks, bonds, real estate, crypto, precious metals, really any realized capital gain. Instead of having to immediately recognize or pay federal taxes on those capital gains, they can redeploy it or reinvest it into these special investment vehicles known as qualified opportunity funds. You can kind of think of qualified opportunity funds as acting as like mutual funds, investment funds, almost kind of like private equity funds to a certain degree. Qualified opportunity funds, some of them are set up by institutional finance organizations, corporate financial institutions. There's even been some QOFs set up by entities as small as limited liability companies for specific projects and activities. And um, if investors reinvest their capital gains within 180 days into a QOF, um, the investor can get a number of federal tax incentives that I will be covering in the next slide. But the QOF, it's kind of acts as the fund to consolidate private capital private capital gains that are redeployed by private investors, and then the qualified opportunity fund deploys that capital into qualifying real estate projects or operating businesses located in opportunity zone areas. This has been a very popular program over the last decade. In fact, when it was initially passed during the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, it received wide bipartisan support. Um, in fact, the bill sponsors were Senators Tim Scott, Republican of South Carolina, and Democrat Cory Booker of New Jersey. And when it passed, it received broad support from both sides of the political aisle, and then was eventually signed into law by the Trump administration. And so again, it's been a very powerful incentive has received broad support from both sides of the political spectrum. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Tracy. So as I mentioned, in exchange for private investors uh, reinvesting their capital gains into these qualified opportunity funds, under the original version of the program, they could get potentially receive three federal tax benefits. If they had, well, first off, if they when they reinvest their capital gains, they had the ability to defer it until either they dispose of the investment or sold the asset, or they had the ability to defer it up until December 31st, 2026, which was the original sunset date for the Opportunity Zone program under its initial iteration. If they had invested that capital gain uh, prior to 5 years uh, before the December 31st, 2026 date, if they had held that investment for 5 years, so they would have had to invest it by December 31st, 2021, they could receive a 10% reduction on the amount of capital gains owed when they eventually had to realize those capital gains. And if they had kept it for 7 years, so if they had invested it by December 31st, 2019, they could get an additional 5%, so a total of 15% reduction on the amount of taxes owed on that original capital gain. And then the final federal tax incentive, and this is actually considered to be the most significant tax incentive as part of the Opportunity Zone incentive program. And it's really actually why a lot of a lot of private investors are attracted to the program. If the investment was held in an opportunity zone area for 10 years or more, any growth in appreciation or any appreciation or growth in value of that investment would be fully exempted or excluded from having to pay any federal capital gains. So to kind of use like a numerical example, let's say an investor had $1 million in capital gains. They reinvest those in a qualified opportunity fund that was deployed in a project in an opportunity zone area. Um, Beginning on December 31st, 2026, they would get, they would still have to pay federal taxes, realize federal taxes on that original $1 million as usual. But let's say the property that they had invested in grows in value to $3 million. And that they held that investment for 10 years, they would pay no federal taxes on that growth in value, the $2 million growth in value. And so as a result of this incentive, many commentators will claim that the Opportunity Zone program is one of the most powerful economic development incentives over the last couple of decades. And since inception, since it was implemented in 2018, it's estimated that it's attracted over 150 billion dollars in investment nationwide. And so it's been an extremely powerful and extremely successful program since it's been utilized. Let's go and go to the next slide, Tracy. So just really quickly wanted to highlight the types of projects and activities that Opportunity Zone Capital can support. So the program was intentionally designed to provide as much flexibility in the types of projects that private investors can deploy their capital. And so here you can see some of the different types, different examples of projects and activities that uh, Opportunity Zone Capital can support. Typically, and over the last 8 years, most of the capital has been deployed towards real estate projects, typically residential real estate. Um, but frankly, it can support a wide range of projects. So yes, it can support pretty much any type of residential real estate. Usually, there's some regulations against the development of single family housing, but really any type of market rate housing, affordable housing, workforce housing, mixed use developments can benefit from OC capital. Can be used to support a wide range of commercial and industrial real estate projects, manufacturing facilities, retail real estate. Um, oh, I do see we have a question in the chat. What about sports and entertainment zone? Yeah, in certain cases, it can support sports and entertainment facilities as well. Really, the only exemption, and then also can support a wide range of operating businesses. Obviously, if since this is acting as an equity investment, if an operating business is receiving OC investment, they would be giving up an ownership stake in their company. But there are plenty of examples under OC 1.0 of startups and small businesses benefiting from OC capital. Really, almost any type of economic development activity can benefit from opportunity zone investment. Only exemptions are what are considered to be like sin businesses. So, liquor stores, manufacturers, uh, for some reason, golf courses. But yeah, certain activities are excluded, but for the most part, um, the OC Capital can support a wide range of activities. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. All right. So initially, as I alluded to earlier, the Opportunity Zone program was going to have a sunset of December 31st of 2026. So December 31st this year, the Opportunity Zone program was set to expire. Um, but due to the success and popularity of the program, many people advocated for its continual existence and its permanency. And so the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act last year made the Opportunity Zone program a permanent fixture of the Internal Revenue Code, and also made some updates and beneficial enhancements to the program, which I'll talk about briefly shortly. But as a result of the program being made permanent, um, governor's offices of all the states across the country, as well as U.S. territory governors of U.S. territories and the mayor of the District of Columbia, are now required to redesignate new census tracts for Opportunity Zone designation, which these designations will be in place for 10 years. Every 10 years, new census tracts will be redesignated. Um, and that process is currently commencing as we speak. Governor's offices have until September 28th to submit their nominations to the U.S. Treasury. And I forgot to mention, yeah, it is the U.S. Treasury with the IRS that does oversee this program. So this isn't a state incentive; it is a federal incentive, and really, states and governor's office, their involvement in this process is being designated to nominate Opportunity Zone census tracts. But um, essentially, in order for a census tract to be eligible for designation, it does have to meet some minimum federal eligibility criteria. So a census tract has to meet one of two conditions. It has to have either a median household income of 70% or less, or a poverty level of 20% or more. And if it does have a poverty level of 20% or more, it can't have a median household income that exceeds 125%. Based on those eligible criteria and those eligible census tracts, governor's offices in each state can nominate up to 25% of those eligible census tracts. And this data, the median household income and poverty level, is based on data collected from the American Community Survey data set under the U.S. Census Bureau for the years 2020 to 2024. That data was recently published earlier this year. And based on it, it's estimated that California has 2,469 eligible census tracts, which means that we will be able to nominate up to 618 as a state. And again, so we're currently in the middle of that process, and I'll be talking about the state selection framework briefly in the coming slides. But real quick, just kind of wanted to highlight some of the enhancements that were made to the program. Apart from making the program permanent, the Opportunity Zones 2.0 did make some enhancements to the tax structure. So it streamlines the structure of the incentive to provide certainty by offering all OC investors the standard 5-year deferral. So as I mentioned earlier, initially, an investor could defer their capital gain until December 31st, 2026. Under this version of the program, all capital gains, all OC investors will have a standard 5-year deferral. After the 5 years, they can still receive a standard 10% reduction in amount of capital gains owed. However, additional enhancements were made to. Oh, it looks like I lost my slide deck.
Sorry about that, bringing it back up.
Yeah, no worries. Take your time. I'll kind of mention. I'll just continue going over the uh, going over the content. There were some additional enhancements made to census tracts located within rural areas. So if a if a investment opportunity zone investment is made in a census tract in a rural area, they'll get the capital gain. When the capital gain is realized, they can get a 30% reduction on the amount owed. This is intended to obviously direct more capital to rural areas, incentivize investors to deploy their capital there. And then one of the last remain final enhancements to the program, all OC investments now will be subject to sweeping reporting and transparency requirements. So one of the shortcomings of OC 1.0 is that investors and projects were not required to report their investments to the federal government, so it made it hard to track where capital was being OC capital was being deployed and what types of projects they were supporting. Under OC 2.0, all investors and projects will now be required to report this information to the Treasury on an annual basis, and so help provide more transparency and help OC stakeholders and spectators identify where capital is being deployed. Next slide, please. All right, so as I mentioned, I really just briefly want to go over the state's priorities for selecting opportunity zone census tracts for OC 2.0 designation. So, yeah, as I mentioned already, uh, governor's offices of each state will be required to nominate new zones to the Treasury by September 28th. As a result, the state of California has developed a process to engage with local jurisdictions to collect feedback and identify uh, competitive and optimal census tracts for potential nomination. And we're currently in the process of collecting census tract recommendations from local jurisdictions, and Tracy will provide more insight on that process during her presentation. But really, when it comes to deciding what census tracts we wanted to nominate, the California identified some key priorities. So first, we are encouraging local jurisdictions to recommend census tract that advance the California Jobs First regional plans and the statewide economic blueprint. Um, so, any projects, activities that located within OC eligible areas that could potentially support the industry sectors and other activities within the Jobs First initiative. We want to we want local jurisdictions to prioritize those and convey that information to us. Any census tract that attracts private investment in affordable housing that aligns with regional housing needs assessment goals. Obviously, we want to try to use this incentive to advance some of the state's housing objectives as much as possible. Um, census tracts that advance or support the state's affordable housing objectives will be viewed more favorably. Any census tracts that include shovel-ready sites or construction-ready sites as defined by the GO-Biz business-ready sites tool. So um, Tracy will be talking a little bit more about that in detail in her presentation. But really the intent behind this criteria is, we want jurisdictions to identify sites that are green zones, have ability to be developed, and really to have ability to attract OC capital. And so shovel-ready, construction-ready sites will be viewed more favorably. And then any census tract that is already attracting existing public investment So it can be federal, state grants, or local funding, financing, resources being directed into those census tracts. Those tracts will be viewed more favorably as well. Next slide, please, Tracy. All right, so we did create a dedicated webpage on the GO-Biz website for providing information, updates, and resources on the OC 2.0 process. We have a QR code right here, so you're welcome to utilize this and get direct access to it, as well as a link. But yeah, definitely encourage you to review this website to gather more information on opportunity zones, as well as the state's upcoming or the state's existing selection process. We did host a series of informational webinars several weeks ago by the guest speakers who did a deep dive into the Opportunity Zone program. Also shared some best practices and insights on how to identify um, the most optimal census tracts for OC investment. So definitely encourage you to watch those recordings if you haven't done so already. And yeah, and definitely encourage you to visit that website for any future updates or announcements. Next slide, please. All right, so with that, I'll go ahead and pass it off to Tracy, who is going to provide a little bit more detailed overview of the website, a FAQ document that the state created, and she'll be walking through the local authority recommendation form. So Tracy, I'll give the floor to you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Tracy Feinberg, Regional Engagement Coordinator with the GO-Biz team. So happy to see so many folks on the call this morning. The website that Brian was just referencing has been dropped in the chat by our colleague Jolia, and now we're going to go over it in a little bit more detail so you can see where we are in the current recommendation process. I'm going to walk through a bit of the website, provide some helpful frequently asked question information, and then I'll also show you the local authority the local authority recommendation form that is currently open. So we're looking at the GO-Biz Opportunity Zones 2.0 webpage. The local authority recommendation form is open now through July 25th at 11:59 p.m. So this website has all the information related to that form. It has regularly updated frequently asked questions documents and an instructions sheet for that recommendation form, which we'll look at in a little bit. So what is happening in this process? Authorized representatives from local jurisdictional authorities may recommend eligible census tracts for Opportunity Zones 2.0 by filling out this form. I'll reference it again. We will have a public comment period opening in August, but we're starting off with this recommendation form. So I said eligible census tracts. Only census tracts that appear on the official Qualified Opportunity Zones eligible tract list by the U.S. Department of the Treasury may be recommended. There's a link here where you can view that list in an Excel file. And then we also have two interactive mapping tools linked in case you want to take a look at what census tracts were in 1.0 versus 2.0 and explore it in a more interactive way. So only census tracts that appear on that list. Census tracts that are not on that list are frequently referred to as off-list census tracts, and we've been receiving a lot of questions about jurisdictional authorities that want to submit recommendations for census tracts that are not on that list. We're currently waiting to receive more guidance from the Treasury regarding the type of data and supporting analysis that states would need to provide in order to nominate off-list census tracts. So at this time, we're not accepting off-list recommendations. But like Brian said, this is the best place to visit in case that information changes as we continue to post updates. So I know that might be a bit of a disappointment. We're trying to get more information and we'll be sure to share it as soon as we can. Another note when it comes to that is that this recommendation form is for one census tract. It's not a recommendation for a specific piece within a census tract. It's also not applicable to census tracts that are right next door, right adjacent. It's for one census tract only. It's not for multiple. So we've also had that question come up. I know that that's a bit of a hassle. If you are going to be submitting a recommendation for multiple census tracts, there is a question in the form that is optional that does allow you to rank them in order of preference in case that's applicable to you. Some other key information that you'll find in that frequently asked questions document, I just wanted to go over verbally here, and they'll all be listed in this question document. Opportunity Zone census tracts in 1.0 are not automatically eligible or ineligible in 2.0. Each tract must meet the new eligibility criteria under the 2.0 standards. This designation doesn't roll over, so even if the census tract was designated previously, you still need to complete this form if you want that census tract to be reevaluated. There's no set amount of census tracts that will be considered or designated by jurisdiction, so there's no minimum or maximum per area. All census tracts will be considered for nomination based on their alignment with the state investment priorities that Brian was referencing. That also means that there's no limit to the number of eligible tracts a local jurisdictional authority may recommend. So as an example, if you're interested in submitting a recommendation for a census tract and a city also wants to complete a recommendation, that's fine. We're encouraging you to work with your city partners, but there's no penalty for submitting a recommendation more than once for a census tract. Please, you only submit one for a census tract, but in case a city or a county also submits for that census tract, there's no penalty. There's also no benefit. So would love to see folks working together to get best information into one recommendation per tract. There's also no point system for this form. All eligible and complete recommendations, we're noting complete recommendations. A lot of the questions are required. Please complete them to the absolute best of your ability. Will be evaluated against those factors we discussed. The governor's office will consider these recommendations and that public input during the public comment period, and ultimately it is the governor's office that will determine which census tracts will be nominated and submitted to the Treasury for approval. So now let's talk about the form itself. A handful of really key things before you dive into completing this. This is in a Microsoft Forms format, and it cannot be saved mid-process. It has to be completed in one sitting. I wish that there was a save option. There is not. Once you complete the form, you can download a copy for your records, but unfortunately, there's no way to pause mid-session, and we don't want anyone to lose any of the work that they've started to put in. So that is why the PDF instructions form that we'll look at has every question exactly as it appears in the form, so that way everyone can have time and prepare without being in the actual form. And then we're recommending that everyone review the frequently asked questions document. We'll always have the date here of when it was last updated. The document itself will also show by date what questions have been updated and have the latest questions at the bottom. And then again, even though we're going to go over it today, we won't go through it in absolute detail, so please make sure to review the form instructions on your own time as well. Then if you do have any questions come up as you're reviewing these documents outside of today's webinar, we do have a second Microsoft form that just asks for a bit of contact information and the questions that you have. In case something comes up after this, our team will review questions and incorporate those into future frequently asked question updates as appropriate. So then if you click here, it's going to take you to the actual form itself. Just want to show y'all what that looks like. Microsoft form, it's got a ton of that same information that I just referenced about where you can view what census tracts are eligible, what you should do before you begin this, when it's due, and that you can send questions over to us, and then it'll start getting into it. I'm going to reshare my screen here so we can look at the instructions form. Okay, again, a ton of the same information, same info multiple times. It's not changing. There's just some instructions at the top of this form in case someone gets to this PDF or this link before they get to the website. The only other thing to note is that the questions that we're going to look at will be, if they're required, they'll be marked with an asterisk. Then same thing, these are the exact same instructions that we just saw at the top of the Microsoft form. This document is meant to be a one-to-one copy so you can review everything in advance. We're going to kick off with some questions That way we know what census tract we're talking about here. You can copy paste the census tract GOID from the Treasury Excel list. Please make sure to include that full digit ID. This box is required you to have all 11 numbers. And then we're asking, of course, for folks to list California-based federally or non-federally recognized tribes within the census tract. We'll need some contact information for the entity that is doing the recommendation. In addition to tribal governments, other options might be cities and municipalities, counties, special districts, regional joint powers authorities, and council of governments. We'll also need some contact information about the submitter completing this form. A submitter must occupy a position within the recommending entity, which is what we've said for those other types of entities. We're just asking that folks who complete this form be authorized to complete this form on the entity's behalf. There's no real documentation we need for this. This form doesn't have anywhere for you to upload files. We're just asking that outside consultants not be the one to submit the recommendation, that you have authority on behalf of the tribal government, on behalf of the census tract, to submit this recommendation. And then let's take a look at the questions we're actually asking about the census tract activity specifically. Number 15, is there currently any committed public investment, local, state, or federal, in the census tract being recommended? We're asking that the funding referenced here be committed. So if a jurisdiction is planning to apply for future public funding but has not yet secured it, the answer would be no. And we've also noted that examples of local investment that could be said yes to here are business improvement districts, benefit assessment districts, or other local funds, as long as they are specifically directed toward infrastructure or public improvement. We do have a question later on in the document about tax increment financing districts, so we're asking that you not include TIFs in question 15 and 16 and reserve that for the questions coming up. Then if so, we'll ask for some information about that funding source. And for every question where you might provide a list of information, we're asking that you separate it with a semicolon. That way everyone's using the same type of listing format. We're asking if the census tract includes a site identified in a housing element approved by the California Department of Housing and Community Development. We do have the housing element download tool linked here for you to review. As Brian referenced, we're asking if this census tract has any shovel-ready sites as generally defined by the GO-Biz Business Ready Sites program. Shovel-ready sites are not required to be listed on that specific website for that specific program. We're just using the definition of that program here. So those factors are listed in the bulleted form, but those shovel-ready sites also do not have to have every factor listed here. We're asking generally, do they meet these kind of factors? You can also include existing buildings that are ready for substantial improvements. And then if yes, go ahead and give us that address. Incomplete or false addresses will not be considered. Please don't leave out the zip code or any pieces of those addresses. Now here are the quick questions about those TIF districts. A TIF district would be considered to be fully formed if a district's governing public financing authority has officially enacted a resolution or formation and adopted the final infrastructure financing plan. And if a TIF district is in process, the local government would have adopted a formal resolution of intention to the establishment. And again, we've got a reminder, if the census tract is located within a different type of financing district, that information can be included in questions 15 and 16. And then we'll ask for the name of those TIF districts. And then if not, are you considering forming one in the next 6 months? We've got a space to include if the governing body of the recommending entity has approved this recommendation via a proclamation, a record of action taken, or a resolution. Not required. We're at the question might be required, but the actual recommendation in that format is not required. We're just interested in knowing that. And then if yes, we're asking for the link to that document. Again, unfortunately, we don't have any way for you to upload a file, but a link here would be great if you do have it. And then list any community or regional partners in support of this recommendation. So if you're working with a city, here would be a great way to list them, or if they submit the recommendation, a great place would be for them to list your names here. And then again, we'll have a whole public comment period in August, starting in August. So that is when letters of support can be sent in, and those letters of support are not required. But if there's interest in providing that, if a city submits a recommendation and you want to provide a letter of support, we'll have a period to do that. This form is just not able to accept that kind of document. Last page of questions for the census tract. We're asking to select any of the following strategic sectors defined by the California Jobs First State Blueprint that the census tract may support. These are listed in alphabetical order. There's no indication of preference here or prioritization. And then there's two open-ended questions here. The first one being a brief description of how the census tract would advance the sector selected in the question previously. And then a brief description of how this census tract would incentivize and or appeal to public and or private investment opportunities. Both of these have a max of 1,000 characters, including spaces, which is approximately 200 words. Then, like I mentioned previously, if there's interest in listing census tracts in order of preference that you are submitting a recommendation for, then you would be able to put that here. Then lastly, we're asking that authorized submitter to verify that they are authorized by the jurisdiction, that the information is accurate and complete to the best of their knowledge, and that understanding submitting inaccurate or misleading information may result in disqualification. You'll type your full name, the date of submission. There's no way to digitally sign it. Just type in the information and you will be good to go. That covers everything related to the form. This is linked on the web page that was linked in the chat today. Like I said, we're continuing to update the frequently asked questions document. A lot of great information about how this form works, questions about Opportunity Zones 2.0 in general. So definitely encourage you to take some time to check out those resources. And I'm not seeing any hands raised or questions in the chat, but at this time, if you have specific questions, maybe something in the form didn't make sense or something specific to your community, we'd love to help get that answered. I can read out questions that are put in the chat, and I can call on folks that use the raise hand button. You're welcome to come off mute and share with us. And as we mentioned at the top, if you'd prefer that your question not be recorded, we'd be happy to pause the recording and turn it back on if folks want.
Before we get to questions, I wanted to note for folks on that a really good tool to see whether the tribes that you work with or your tribe specifically might be located in a potentially eligible area is that Novogradac map that's linked on the website.
Yes.
And I don't see that there is a tribal lands overlay, but I think tribes, you know where you are. So I think if you'd like to take a look at that, that's a pretty good way to see whether which census tracts are eligible that you might want to nominate.
Yeah, I'm glad you
absolutely.
mentioned that, Christina. We definitely encourage you to use the interactive mapping tool that Novogradac published and helping to identify potentially eligible census tracts. Very, very accurate tool. Novogradac based it on the American Community Survey data. Yeah, unfortunately, they don't have any overlay features for tribal areas, but one particularly useful feature is the distinction between eligible rural areas and non-rural areas, which can be extremely helpful. It also has has the ability to filter or show zones that were initially designated under OC 1.0. But yeah, really appreciate you mentioning that. We do also have links to a couple other interactive mapping tools, one published by the Economic Innovation Group, very similar, as well as direct links to the U.S. Treasury's page website with the full spreadsheet of eligible census tracts. So we definitely refer any person who's interested in recommending a census tract, please utilize those tools, confirm that it is eligible. But yeah, as Tracy mentioned, happy to take any open questions at this time. You're welcome to drop any questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand and come off mute. I want to give you all the opportunity to ask any questions for our team while we have some time left in this session. Not seeing anything. Oh, looks like we got Karen. Go ahead, Karen.
Sorry, it took me a minute to unmute myself. Karen Louie with Department of Finance, and just want to add on to the overlay of the tribal areas. So we're able to get the shapefile, the geographic boundaries of federally recognized tribal areas. I was wondering if there's a source for the non-federally recognized tribal areas. We definitely want to include those the state tribes that are not federally recognized, but we don't know if there's an existing shapefile that covers all the tribal areas, or because currently at the moment we just have the federal recognized tribes. Is there we did some research. I wasn't sure if the Native American Heritage Commission would be the appropriate source for that, or the Office of Tribal Affairs.
Yeah, I think we can have a conversation, Karen, because we generally have an idea of where all of the non-federally recognized tribes are located. Typically, any headquarters will either be leased or owned by the tribe as a nonprofit. But we are happy to work with you, and also probably our office would be best. Heritage Commission has ancestral lands, which is a little bit different from where tribes may have headquarters or may have land holdings. So I think it would be helpful to have a conversation on the side. And I think anyone on here, I know there's a couple of attorneys who represent non-federally recognized tribes. They I think would be happy to chat with you as well.
That sounds great. Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Well, I'm not seeing any additional questions being added to the chat. Also, not seeing any hands raised. So if anyone does have any questions they want to ask for our team after the session, there is a link to our questionnaire form in the chat. You're welcome to submit any questions there, and our team will follow up with our answers and responses. Also, any relevant questions that have not already previously been answered will be added to the FAQ document. Oh, I do see we got a question from Chris in the chat. Will there be a GO-Biz follow-up for tribes?
Chris, what are you envisioning? Because what we'll do is we'll send out this recording to our tribal list to make sure everybody has it.
Yeah, because noticing that there's not very many tribes, and don't know, tribes are traveling. Obviously, they have busy schedules. Just wondering, because I represent a few other tribes that just could not make it today. So just wanted to kind of see if there was going to be any kind of follow-up, or if there's, obviously I have you guys as point of contacts, but just was wondering.
Sure. So we'll send out kind of all of the resources as a reminder, and we'll send out all of what was discussed today with some of the folks on here. If you guys, if tribes have questions, or if anybody on here has questions. And then we'll probably also highlight this within the next Tribal Nation Grant Fund meeting just because we know that there's a lot of overlap with folks who are wanting to do some interesting economic development in that space as well. So we'll make sure that everybody has all the resources they need to reach out to GO-Biz directly.
Thank you. Awesome job.
Thank you,
Christina,
Chris.
I'll also add that GoBiz has been hosting weekly office hours sessions that are really set up for some more Q&A, referencing most recently reviewed questions, and for sharing any updates. And certainly our tribal partners and community leaders are invited to join those also for a broader general overview if you would like to join those. And those are listed on that website also, Christina, that you pointed out, or the GoBiz website has that information. So we've got one coming up on June 30th next week. So that is another option for community members to consider joining as well.
And then
And
Chris,
real quick, I do see a question from Chris Stewart in the chat. Wanted to address that real quick, asking if the reservation is not listed as eligible on the Novogradac site, it will not be considered. He was looking for confirmation on that. Um, so yes, if a census tract is not listed as being eligible on the Novogradac mapping tool or on the treasuring list, it would not be eligible for nomination or designation to the U.S. Treasury, and that is a federal requirement, a federal provision as part of the bill. A census tract would have to meet the minimum federal eligibility criteria of 70% median household income or less, or a poverty level of 20% or more. And unfortunately, the governor's office and the state doesn't have any authority to overrule that policy. Thank you, Krista.
Krista, and for folks who are working in the federal advocacy space, I think that is a good point as you continue to advocate for inclusion of tribal lands generally, that there are tribes that are definitely should be eligible, but are situated in areas that potentially would have an income rate that would make the whole tract ineligible. So just something to note as you continue to advocate for that.
Thank you, Christina.
All right. Well, looks like I'm not receiving any additional questions. So I guess with that, we can go ahead and wrap up the session. Really want to thank you all again for taking time to join us this morning. Really appreciate your engagement and input in this process. We really value here at GO-Biz collaboration with tribal communities, and yeah, we're here to help with any assistance and anything we can provide assistance on. So, oh, thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much for joining. Yeah. So again, as a reminder, if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out using that recommendation form. But if there's no other comments or remarks from my coworkers, my colleagues, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. So thank you all again for participating, and hope you have a wonderful remainder of your week.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much
Thank
to
you.
Christina for joining us and having your office on here today.
Thanks, everyone, and we'll be in touch with some of these follow-up items.
All right. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, all.